Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Digger Evans Model Railway. In this video I'm going to show you close up how I achieved the rusting effects on this particular. Let's try and get that steady for a focus. That's it. If you look around these rivets, they're looking very rusty and decayed and what have you. And I put this on my social media page on Facebook. If you want to check that out, it's Digger Evans on Facebook. That's all it is. You feel free to come and have a look, send me a request and I'll accept you on there. And a lot of people have been asking if I'd show them in more detail how to do it, and so this is what we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to show you the things that I've used, the instruments. This is the old cocktail stick with a split in the end and a piece of sponge just wedged in, just roughly wedged in. There's no finesse to it, there's no art to it, it's loose, it's quite loose. You'll notice one end slightly longer than the other. The longer end takes more pressure and it spreads out more and it's more absorbent as it is, and the shorter end doesn't take quite as much pressure when you're putting it down. I've also got some of those self-grip tweezers and I've gripped a sponge in there, and you can see again, you can see the end of that. That's the surplus for this purposes, and the fresh piece that I'm going to use is on that end. Again, it's only a few millimeters long, 5 mil long is that. First of all, you've got to choose the right materials, and what I use is these acrylic paints, Brunel Franklin. They're from, I got these from B&M Bargains or whatever they call themselves. Others are available. I use these, simple as that. They last for ages, and they're only, as you can see, £1.50, which is probably about less than $2 still anyhow, not much more in dollars, Canadian or American. And that's burnt sienna, and this is burnt umber. Same stuff, squeezy tube, burnt umber, and I'll show you how I'm using it. There's a couple of other things, but that's later on. So we want to get started, and I've chosen this. Now this here, there we go. It's an old locomotive body that I bought as a body to sit in the scrapyard. I'm not too bothered about it, but if you're making an area and you want to do it exactly how I've done that, you've got to pick a detailed area, an area with some great detail, so that it actually stands out more. The rule is with rust, usually the darker it is, the longer it's been there, but rust doesn't always spread from the center outwards. You know, if you get a tiny chip in the paint, very often water runs behind the paint and it's rusting away where you can't see it. So what I do, I'm just going to get a bit of the first colour, which is burnt sienna, onto the short end of the sponge, and I'll show you it before we go too far. That's the amount, a tiny amount. Now I'm going to just have a look at this riveted area around here where these rivets are. I'm just going to gently start putting it on all the way about. Now if you think you've done too much, or I've spread it where I don't want it or anything like that, flip your sponge over, absorb some of it back off. What that'll do is leave slight hints of it around the area. So it's not about how much you put off sometimes, it's how much you take off rather than how much you put on, sorry. And I'll just keep doing that and it's beginning to look slightly rusty, so I'm going to put a little bit more on of that same one, same colour. You only want to be gentle with it, but there's no right and wrong. You can't do it wrong. Now that's really bright around there. This normally it's going to take quite some time to do it all, way beyond the limits of what we've got in this video, so I'm going to speed things up by doing just that little bit. Now I'm going to put some darker on, some darker coloured rust, and this is the burnt umber, not the burnt sienna. I'm going to use the exact same sponge in the exact same area. That paint, you'll notice I haven't given it a minute to dry. We're just going to go straight into it with this one and start looking at it. There you go. Now we've covered more or less the same area, but you can still see tones here and slightly around there of the previous colour. Now I'm going to flip the sponge over again, press it in and start just absorbing a bit, and now you can see we're pressing that sponge in gently. It's making a much more rough area. There you can see it's started to leave the imprint of the sponge. Now as that paint gets a little bit more tacky, you're going to leave more of an imprint, and it's up to you how tacky you let it go as to how deep the imprint is. Now I've got the lighter colour again, and I'm just going to touch it in a couple of places along the top of that ridge, and now back over again with the clean side of the sponge, just pressing it on until we're getting something looking like, there we go. Now that's only a slight area of it, so I'm going to do a little bit more down here. Again, starting off with a lighter colour, making my way around. I'll just clear that up there, a bit too far. Sorry, I'm out there. Let's get that in focus. That's brought it back into focus. So you can see now, just by applying a couple of different colours and lightly coming on and off with the sponge, see that big lump there behind that sponge? I'll just give it a gentle press and we've got it flattened. And that's all I need to do to it. Now that's the first process, and we'll call that done for this video intents and purposes. The next thing we're going to do is have a look at some powders and some other washes that will go to bring the area up nicely. So just bear with me one sec. So that's dried off a bit now. I cheated and used a hairdryer. I've got here a little bit of powders. These are powders I've made myself. I'll just move that. Powders I've made myself into these little containers. That's from pastels. You just scrape them along with side of a knife and just scrape them into powder. I've used orange and brown in varying quantities till I've got a tone that I'm happy with. Now that is rusty, but it kind of got an orange tinge to it, which is going to help highlight things. So we'll put that back into focus, put that back onto focus there. Now if you, in the background you'll see I've got tons of brushes. I'm not a brush fanatic, but I see a packet of paint brushes, and if they're on sale I get them, and you know I can always use them for something or other. Now I'm going to apply, just dabs this little brush into the powder. Very short bristles on this brush, yet they're still soft. And now I'm just going to dab about over the top with the powder. Now it looks all orange and powdery there. That's just a quick way of doing it. And now I've got a brush that's one of these makeup brushes. You can get them cheaper. It's grinds all off your misses. Just give it a brush over, so we're not got excessive powder, but you can still see the lumps and bumps that go with it. The next thing I'm going to quickly show you before this video turns into a marathon is this stuff. I've brought it over. It's Mig Enamel Wash. It's not cheap, but it's good stuff. And this one is called Light Rust Wash. Now I just take the lid off. It's been shaken up for quite a while, but I've took the lid off and there's a lot of paint inside the lid. I'll show you there. Now I've got these brushes, really fine brush there. I got these from eBay. If you go on the part of eBay where they have brushes for applying makeup and things like that, it's very fine. There you go. You'll see these nail art brushes, and they're only £1 or so for a lot of brushes, and you get thin brushes like that. Now I'm just going to dig the whole length of that into some paint off the lid, and I'm just going to touch slight areas around where I've done. You've got to bear in mind this is a thin wash, and you've got to bear in mind gravity will bring the water down and make it run down in streaks. And you see the streaked area there. I'll just let that get in focus. Hopefully. Focus up, guys. And you can see this area, and I just draw it down very, very thinly. And you see I've gone and put too much on there because I'm working from behind the scenes, so I can move that with the sponge and it just looks like a run, and it just draw it down like that and it looks like rainwater has washed it down. Now that one is in enamel, so you can actually thin it out with a suitable thinner, a white spirit. And now what I'll do with this, I'll just keep going. Sorry about this focus, it's not very, there we go. I'll just keep going with this now until I'm satisfied. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to include a couple of stills of the jobs I've done so you can get a close-up look of how they go. Thank you all very much for looking in. I know this has been a rather long-winded video, but I did promise I'd do it a little bit more in depth. Thank you everyone who has recently subscribed. I've had quite a few more and I really appreciate it. Please do like, subscribe and put a comment on this video. Any questions at all, I will answer every single question you've got. Really pleased to share this method with you all. Thank you all ever so much for looking in. I do appreciate every single one of you. Thank you all very, very much. Bye bye for now, my friends.